Good evening, America. What is up? Kunal here, Bulls on Wall Street. Guys, let's dig into what's happening in the stock market and what the game plan is for tomorrow. The QQQs was just really flat on the day, 0.21%. The SPY was, basically similar, flat on the day. But I think the big story today, for me at least, was even though the indexes were flat, we saw a lot of leakage in momentum names, right? That mini bubble that we were all kind of feeling is deflated hardcore. And it happened really like in like a blink of an eye. It just started rolling and then the cascade started, right? And so you saw these names like OCLO and stuff like that that just right got the 190. I mean, it's retraced $50, right? Right into the 20, SMA and RGTI. And guys, I don't believe these are bounceable. Now that the EMAs have shifted, they will take time to even out. So if you're sitting there thinking like, should I bounce RGTI? Should I bounce QBTS? I do think if they gap down tomorrow, like say you get a 10% gap down tomorrow, I do think they bounce for the day, but I believe that probably the longer term top is into these things. And when I say longer term, remember, I'm a very short term trader. So till the end of the year top, right? Like, even if they bounce up, like you're probably just getting to here and then, right, like a lower high. Same thing with RGTI, and, this kind of thing. So I thought that was really the big story today was that even though the index is held up, the stocks that people were trading and piling into, your OCLOs, RGTIs, your rare earths, right? Look, a 50% pull in just a couple days, right? USAR, 50% pull, really just in a handful of days, right? Even the ones like they had the good news out, the U.S. government's, doing this and that. I mean, 50% drop in, all of these. So I think for tomorrow, if all of these gap down, let's say like another 5%, 10%, we try to bounce them, right? So this one, but momentarily, like I would say momentarily. So like, right, if USAR comes back and gaps down to $20, for example, well, that's a huge breakout spot on it, right? And so I think that's like a great potential bounce. And then you play to like 30, 32, and then makes a lower high, and then, it fucks off for the rest of its life, right? I don't say, when I say rest of the life, remember, I'm a short term trader, so I'm not making, I don't care what happens a year from now, but I'm just talking about right in the next, coming weeks to months. So I think this was the big story for today that we need to just be aware of. There was just a big heavy bleed in quite a few things. Even stuff like, right, like SMR, right? Fake breakout and down over here. And so to me, my plan is twofold. So I'm going to keep this very simple for you guys. My plan is twofold. These ones that have exploded, like just bukkake, Cleveland steamered all over everybody's faces. If we gap down, we long them. All right? If we gap down, and it's got to be a decent size, we long them. All right? For a day trade. But the longer term tops are in on these things for the next handful of months. Like, this is a $22 billion market cap, right? They themselves have said they ain't going to make any, dollars, any pesos for like at least 10 years, right? Like, what are we talking about here? So I think this is like kind of the case. Even you could throw like something like an iron, right, into this, right? Like but you want to see that kind of wash up. But once again, this is also, the top is in on this thing for the year, all right? If it bounces, it's just coming up to here, and then it's, fucking off, right? That's the play, right? If we gap down. On the other side of things, what I'm concentrating on, if you want more quality, if you want a nice quality in life and you don't want to, leave some marks in your underoos while you're trading, then I think there's some good stocks here. I wouldn't say good, it's all relative. But we have some names here on the 50-day moving average that I think are going to be playable into the coming, week, right? So I think something like this, and it may need to undercut, right? It may need to undercut a little. Hold on, let me get the right watch list here. It may need undercut a little bit, but I think we're in the game for like something like that. I think on the quantums, the key is like, I want to gap down and then watch IONQ for the clues, right? If it gaps down and undercuts the 50 and remounts, then, game is on for a small period of time. I think this 50 is like a big spot on it, right? Guys, these things, they go up and they collapse, right? And that's why, I got a lot of emails and texts from people like, hey, I got call options and these things and they're just dying. And it's like, well, I feel for you as a human, but, turds are turds. And, if you bottom pickers, sticky fingers. So I think 50 SMA, 50 SMA on NBIS. Maybe 100, but ideally 50 SMA. I think area. Now remember, they don't just bounce because you hit the 50 SMA. I think we need a short. We can bleed off this APP. The range has been pretty good on this. This one looks like the longer term top is into. Like it popped down lower high, came down, lower high again, right? So it's like lower high. You got a little neckline action here. Let's see. This one I'm not trying to break off the 50s, but Oracle I am. Look, Shop had an inside day today. I think this could still hold up. I like it. I thought SMCI had a fairly narrow range day, and it's getting there. It needs to congeal just a little bit more. Remember, you don't want to be that guy that eats the pizza as soon as it comes out of the oven, right? The cheese falls right off. You gotta wait 7 minutes. 7 minutes to let it congeal, to let it tighten. It's like you're, minute 2, minute 3, minute 4, minute 5, and then it goes. That's when it's going to go. Loosey-goosey? No. You want, like, as a bald man, you know the drill. You want to tighten right? You want to tighten right when you're dealing with these things. I think that's the spot on it. Hey, interested in DELL. After the breakout here, you're retesting the breakout and you got to hold at the 20. It held up okay, up almost 2% today. I think that one we can do. General Motors, big time breakout. You wouldn't think so. I actually passed on this multiple times today, thinking it's General Motors. How much can it move? Well, it moved. That's the thing with biases, right? Like, you just look like an asshole if you have too many biases. Hot chart's a hot chart. I think this has got a muchos buenos on it. Crowd is setting up here too. It looks a little funky. It's not clean yet, but it can unclean itself relatively quickly. Apple held up pretty good today. I'm looking for any kind of tap backs to this 260 zone. I think that'll probably get bought up as it's a retest. A bottoming pattern, just a little bit more of a swing setup here, right? But you got a lower high here, and you're taking out this. You're nipping out a little bit. I mean, that's looking pretty good right there. Up 5%, 9 points today on a $180 stock. Not bad, right? That's a decent enough ATR for something like this. This can be day traded, but probably a little bit more of a swing setup if it can remount this 50. But I like the overall look. Now, look, I thought this was over here was probably going to be the bouncer, and it didn't happen. So just be mindful of that. Galaxy held up okay on its earnings. A lot of its weakness came down to, right, Iron laid the Blumpkin, and Wolf laid the Blumpkin, and some of this kind of stuff. So you do got to be a little bit mindful. So I repeat, for the plan for tomorrow, if we get the big gap down, we'll long the turds, rare earths, quantums, this kind of thing. If we don't, then we want to hit some of these right names that are sitting on the 50. You got Oracle here, right? Maybe NBIS. This is getting pretty oversold, right? Down about 40 points. Guys, this little spec bubble deflated pretty quickly, and it was very sneaky. That was the thing. It was like very sneaky. Everybody was trying to hit it, and then it started to roll over, and everybody's like, is it going to bounce, right? But you can see here, you're getting really oversold here. Give me a gap down on this. I mean, we're taking this thing home. I think something like that. Let me just throw out one more, too, here. VRT is still holding up okay. It needs to, its earnings are coming up, I believe, tomorrow. So We'll see if this kind of busts through or gaps down or so on and so forth. But guys, that's it. Keep it simple for tomorrow. Only long the turds if they gap down and stretch out the rubber band, the oversoldness. And then you want to sell into the spikes because the top is in for the rest of the year on rare earths and probably nuclear and definitely quantums. All right. I love you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Peace in the Middle East.